I want to welcome to the show Evelyn Kung.
Thank you.
You are the clinical director here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and you've been working in this field for how many?
20-something.
20-something, probably, I'm sure on some
Closer
days.
to the 30 end.
I'm sure sometimes it feels like 20-something decades that you've been working in this field. But Evelyn has such a rich base of knowledge in treating so many kiddos successfully too, that she's sort of the touchstone that we all go to when there's an issue, and everybody runs to her and says, what do you do when? And at some point, she's seen some version of it, which is a pretty amazing thing. So we welcome you back. Thank you for being here on our first maiden voyage, first show, live show 2020.
2020.
Doesn't it feel weird?
It's so strange.
Who would have ever thought? Okay, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna jump right into this because
Sounds good.
we had somebody write in just before the holiday when we were breaking, and then I guess it was just after we broke for the holiday, and then they've written in a couple of times. Two separate questions, and one is, how can I teach my son about death, which I want to cover that in a general nature, but they also wrote in and said, hello, Shannon. I've just seen the most disturbing behavior from my 11-year-old son, and I'm scared out of my mind. My son got a knife and tried to poke or cut our bunny rabbit. His bunny rabbit, the one he asked for last year at Christmas but doesn't take care of. He plays Terraria, which is a game I'm not as familiar with.
I'm not that familiar.
He's not low functioning, but he's not high functioning. Some of his stereotypical repetitive language talks about dying or death. This is unacceptable. We have two little girls, 3 and 4. I know our son used to like Minecraft. How the heck can I help him understand the difference between a game and real life? What programs can I ask ABA to run with him to help him? What can I do? I'm a mom and an RBT, yay, which I did because for him and to help others, but I'm just sick. My son only takes Prozac for anxiety, nothing else. He is so loving, but this side of him makes me angry. And there's a lot of fear.
Lots of fear.
And a lot of anger. And
a lot of stress.
And a lot of stress. So let's see, where do you want to wade into this?
Well, what part do you want to start with? Just generally about death, or do you want to start about the rabbit first?
Let's start with the rabbit first, because I think that's the thing, and then we can, because all of our kids need to learn about death and understand what it is. But let's start with the rabbit, because I think that's the scariest part.
With all the kids out there, one thing I tell parents is don't jump to any conclusions. Because we hear about the scary things, about killing animals and what that might be the proceed.
Right.
But don't jump there immediately, because our kids with autism, their understanding of the world is very different from ours. And I think, like with your question about what programs can I ask ABA to run, really the first place to start is don't make an assumption that something is terribly wrong, but make the assumption of more that they're trying to figure out what the world is.
Yeah.
Just like the way the kids turn the trucks over and look at the wheels.
Yeah.
My kids with a lot of language, when I ask them what they're doing, they're sitting there trying to figure out how the wheels will run. They want to know exactly how it runs.
Yeah.
So almost in that way, when you have a child who wants to know what's going on, you have to stay very factual with them. You start showing them how things work. Like there is, definitely start with real versus imagined, teaching them what that means, because that is something that a lot of our kids do confuse.
Yeah.
Just like, and it's a typical stage in typical development too. The kids are trying to figure out what's real versus imagined.
Yeah.
You're going to do it the same way teaching a child with autism. It's just that you have to be very intentional and very concrete in categorizing what is real and what is imagined, what is pretend, and teaching them all the language that involves both, and teaching them how to categorize, because depending on what category falls in, you have a different response.
Yeah.
If I want to learn about why I keep having a headache, I'm not going to go open my head. But hey, there's this way, we can go to the doctor.
Yeah.
And they can show us through this, and this, how it works.
Right.
And I've learned from the past that whenever there's something they're trying to find out, but maybe they're not good at asking how and why questions.
Yeah.
And almost as soon as we're able to teach them some of those how and why questions on how to ask, they start asking for all these situations. But if you don't have, just like with We talk about replacement behaviors for very severe behaviors or challenging behaviors. It applies here too.
Yeah.
There's a question in there that he's trying to figure out, and he can't ask that. And he doesn't know how to ask that, so he is actually going on his own and trying to do it.
Yeah.
So it's coming out very inappropriately.
Yeah.
But there are so many kids, once we teach them how to ask that question,
yeah,
and then we give them a way to find it. And now with the internet, it's so easy to show somebody, this is like what a heart looks like in real life.
Yeah.
And you can go see a video. You don't have to like go do open heart surgery to figure out what it looks like. But there are other methods. We have a lot of parents who are physicians. I've had parents sit down with their child and just talk about, this is how your blood runs, and this is how it works, or this is how, the definition of death, a very factual one, where you're getting an emotion, is when your heart stops and your brain stops, and that's death. And a lot of times those more simplified answers are enough.
Yeah.
You don't have to get into the complicated, because just like, when you're talking about explaining to a typical child, a lot of times families want to get into, all the multiple layers, but you have to look at the child's age to see how much they are understanding.
Yeah.
It's the same way, I think, for our kids, except our kids are missing concepts.
Okay, so first step is to not panic.
Not panic, definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And to, so the lessons that I'm sort of thinking about, there's a whole bunch of things in the cognition curriculum that, am I correct? That's
not even in cognition yet. Just real versus pretend isn't even in cognition.
Where is that?
I think it's under just basic language.
Okay, I didn't realize
that. Yeah, because you're just basically trying to identify the definition of what's real, and what's not.
Imaginary. Okay, and then, but I would imagine that at a certain point, that part of what the issue is understanding, because what I read into this when the mom says, so this is what was going to happen with the bunny, and I've got these two little girls, she mentions that, is the idea of the permanence of death. And this is what is so difficult. I think it's difficult for all of us. Like for me, I'm, a 57-year-old woman, and it still mystifies me how permanent death is. Mm-hmm. And I know we have a good friend that I'm just going to say, because everybody knows Nancy Alspaugh Jackson, when her husband died, and her son Wyatt, who was like 14 at the time, and getting him, I think he still struggles with the concept. I think now he gets it, but for a long time he struggled with the concept of, well, when is dad going to come back? Mm-hmm. And I know that was very frustrating, but my mom died 6 years ago, and I got to be honest, on certain days, if I'm tired, I'm like, when is she going to be back? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I'd love to talk to her about that. When is that going to happen mm-hmm. again? And then I have to remind myself, oh, not in this life. And then we go into what do I think about after this life, which is a whole other thing that has to be very carefully dealt with kiddos, because if you say the wrong thing, I recall that a very well-meaning pastor said to Wyatt, you'll get to be with your dad again after you die. And then he was like, well, when do I get to die and go talk to dad? Because he didn't understand you can't go back and forth.
Yeah.
It's all overwhelming.
Yeah, and it's so overwhelming, and you just think, I always think, like, for our kids, if you do something repetitively and if you do it long enough, you just expect it to happen.
Okay.
And you have your parent or whoever it is that's there, and they've been there for 14 years.
Yeah.
You're not getting over it tomorrow.
Right.
It's just, you're going to want that person. You're going to want to talk to your mom. And I think that's okay. And teaching the kids it's okay to want it.
Yes.
But understanding that it's not coming.
And I got to say that pretty much in the beginning, like in the first week, it was almost an hourly thing mm-hmm. with Wyatt, where, every hour they had to explain to him, no, your dad died. He's not here anymore. You can talk to him in different ways, but, and then it moved to maybe it was
once a week,
once a day, and then it was once a week, and now, maybe occasionally it comes up in conversation. Yeah. But for this mom, because she did ask the question about death, and I feel like part of what, great to explain to him, so this is your bunny is real. Your bunny is, because our kids are confused.
Yeah, they're so confused, especially with all of the images now on TV. I mean, videos, it's everywhere. How do you teach him to ask, is this real or is this like pretend?
Yeah.
You know, and if you can teach it, and then she can start just labeling it for him. No, this is real. This is not.
Yeah.
You know, this is pretend. That helps the kids categorize it. You know, don't expect him to be able to come to it on his own. But you do have to sit there and teach it. And there are so many kids. Like, I remember there was a kid, and this is, I don't know if you remember that, is it Disney, Indian in the Cupboard?
Yes.
I had a child who would go, there's a cupboard that looked like the one in the movie.
Yeah.
And he would literally go there, look in the cupboard, look around, and he'd be like, to see if it was there.
Yes.
Like when that, like, I don't know how long he did it for, but I mean, just trying to teach him that idea. Or that Buzz Lightyear wasn't going to just fly on his own.
And we perpetuate this in so many different ways. We have this very rich fantasy world that, you know, we take kids to Disney movies, we do things like this, and then we just have gone through holidays where, you know, there are all these myths and legends and characters that we perpetuate. It's very hard for them to know what's real and what's... I remember... I have a friend who has a beautiful daughter. I mean, this little girl, when she was little, she looked like a doll. I mean, she just like beautiful red curly hair that was just like, she looked like she stepped right out of a package. But, you know, and she was tiny. And the first time that my son met her, he walked up to her and he stuck his thumb in her eye. And everybody was like, why would he do that? And when he had the words to say, he said, I wanted to know if she was real, because she didn't look real. And, you know, it was inappropriate, and we all freaked out, but that's what he was trying to figure out. So first we need to get him to understand that the bunny is real.
Yeah, the language part of it is so important. There's no way to, you know, I call it like some kind of encoding. They have to know the language, like this is what real means and this is what pretend means. And you start having to categorize what things are real and what things are pretend, and being very clear. You know, when you have 3- and 4-year-old daughters at home, you might be wanting to have all these fantasy and kind of like, with Christmas, with this past holidays, all the things. But to him, you're going to have to speak very matter-of-factly. And to him, the more matter-of-fact you are, the easier you're making life. If you know, there's a lot of, I think there's mourning for parents because they want to do that with the traditions with their children too. But really with kids on the spectrum, speaking more factually actually makes their world more clear. They're already dealing with trying to figure out, you know, rules that keep changing or things that keep changing. So the more clear you are about facts, it really does make it easier for all the kids.
And just so you guys know, like, that's like an all the time thing then. Like, you know, you're at the store, you're at Sprouts, and you see, you know, somebody holding a real dog and somebody else holding you know, you go, is that a real dog or a fake one? Like, everything becomes the example constantly. Is that real or is that fake? Is that alive or is that pretend? You know, you're reading a book and you go, is this little boy real or is this constantly?
As you're driving, you're looking at billboards. You're pointing at them. Is that real? Is that not? And he has to. You're trying to define the world for him. And the easiest way is just to tell him. You can do lessons at home to lay a foundation. For but it has to go through his whole life to try to figure out what's real and what's not. Then you have to give him the language to ask. Like, what is that? How does that work? You know, and just give them the language to ask the questions that they're so inquisitive about, which is great that he's inquisitive. And I've had so many kids finally be able to ask questions that they never used to, or like the way Jem's asking, like, I wanted to know if she was real. And just how to formulate that kind of question is very difficult.
Very difficult. But then at a certain point, I think somewhere in there's got to be either cause and effect or consequences or whatever to understand that, you know, what happens when you hurt somebody and what the consequences, no?
Yeah, there is, except I'd even go more concrete before even that. Because cause and effect is very difficult. Understanding that concept, because it's constantly changing, and you're relating two items in terms of time too. And how they're related. And a lot of our kids, before they get to that abstract understanding of time, don't get it. So a lot of times you will just be teaching them, when this happens, this is what happens. You just teach them the sequence of activities. And there's our kids are rule governed. To keep them safe, you never take a knife to anything live. Like, you just give really straightforward rules to keep them safe.
And so make that rule. No knives touch anything that's alive.
No knives, no scissors, nothing touches anything alive, because life is precious.
There we go.
Teach them that, and they're rule governed. So if you can teach those kind of rules right at the top too, then for sure, at least you're providing the barrier already.
There we go.
From anything dangerous or safety issues.
And so again, you would talk about that constantly. So if you're taking out a knife to slice a piece of bread, you're saying, is this something that's alive? Can we cut it with a knife? Yes, it's not alive, right? And now we're gonna, cut a piece of roast beef. Is it alive? No, we can,
Yeah, it's a sandwich. It's like
right. So can we use a knife on it? Yes.
Yes.
But that you keep doing that example. Oh, drill down.
You drill down all the safety. I say put in all the rules. Provide that safety wall.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to worry about that anymore. And let's say I'm going to go there.
Yes.
Let's say you've taught all of that. But this child has some kind of fascination, you really do need to go contact a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
And preferably one that understands children or individuals on the spectrum.
Yeah.
So that they can navigate that divide and try to figure out, is there something else going on? Because sometimes there is.
I would also say it's time to, he's 11 and but you have a 3 and a 4-year-old, you may have taken all your safety stuff out, but put it back. Knife drawers can be
locked up.
Yep, totally locked up, and scissors can be put in places where people can't get to them until you make sure that you have it under control. Now, the last part of this, she brought up the video game thing, and this is some dicey area. And I don't know the video game that you're saying, the Terraria. And it very easily, if it's at all, a lot of these games have little side things that they teach, and I've seen what the ramifications of those are. You got to really monitor. I would say to you that there is a wonderful thing called Autcraft, which is Minecraft, but it is monitored by an autism dad. And you sign your child up for it. You have to go through a process. He, vets to make sure that it's really a child. They come in and their time there is monitored, and he reports back to you if anything happens that's untoward.
Very nice.
And so I just want to encourage you to pull whatever the video game is right now until we know what's happening. I have nothing against this game. I don't know what it is, but, for right now, and put him in Autcraft and go, hey, I got this new thing, new place, and enjoy that for a while.
Yeah, definitely. The whole video game world goes under that pretend, I just spent through the holidays doing a trip, my house building trip, with a teenager on the spectrum. And it was interesting, just his worldview, and he understands movies. But his mom has taught him how to put all of the security settings to censor himself, because she knows what scares him, and she's taught him what scares him.
That's good.
And then he goes in and turns on all his settings.
That's clever.
Yeah, so it was really interesting just to kind of watch him through. And I think but that gave him a sense of control where he can go into a fantasy world and not worry about entering into something that is scary for him.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great thing for your kids. If you are going to sit and do a video game, you should get to know it. You need to go into that video game with him and start talking about, in real life, we don't do this.
Yeah.
So as he's playing the video game, stopping it, which may annoy him, and saying, in real life, you can't do this.
Yeah.
This is not allowed.
Unfortunately, with a lot of the games, the game itself might be okay, but then it's all the people who come to the game and what they do in the game and to the game.
Yeah.
And some of these games, they have, where the people playing the game can change the rules of the game and create a skin in which this happens. Or your child could just be playing even in Minecraft, your child can be playing and doing whatever, and then somebody else can come in and burn everything that they've built down. This is why I really encourage you. We've had Stuart Duncan, he's the dad who does Autcraft. At this tender age of 11, what better, and it's free, there's no cost to it. He encourages people, if they, want to make a donation, that they can, but it's free to be able to do it. And then you have some peace of mind knowing that your child is getting the social interaction, because we don't want to totally take that out, but that it's productive and monitored. So that if your child, and you'll see that there will be times that your child will do something in a video game that'll be inappropriate and they'll get kicked out. And your child's like, I don't know what happened. And you can't go back and ask what happened, what did he say? It's just a lost opportunity. Whereas as in Otcraft, if your child does something that they would normally get kicked out for, they will send you a message and say, hey, this is what happened. They will have a conversation with him. They will encourage you to have a conversation with him, and then they get to stay.
That's great.
And learn.
Yeah, because it's important. So many, our kids have a difficult time repeating and describing what happened. They may not even notice cues, and there is, even though many of our kids have good rote memory, their delayed memory is not very good.
Yeah.
Or like their ability to repeat just what happened. And they can't communicate.
I'm so sorry.
They can't communicate clearly enough for the parent to know. So you do, to have this other monitor, or to have somebody to sit with your child and just to explain, like, it's okay here in this video, but it's not okay in real life. To discriminate. You have to help them discriminate.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.